I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am the flaming sword of Archangel Michael. What does that mean? Spirit works through us in so many different ways. The only thing it cannot work through is personal choice, free will. This is why you see so much corruption in this world. The level of corruption is a direct result of free will. Free will is a very tricky thing, as is corruption. Why we see today people who are running for office, people who feel that they can take other people's lives, their livelihood, people who at any point in time override another person's choices, another person's free will, any given institution's free will and the right to live and thrive. They are, in fact, living out free will in the form of what is corruption today. So I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am the flaming sword of Archangel Michael. Is free will. It is invoking the divine essence of God and choosing that. So, in essence, if we're looking at the constitution of this and the intention of this, you are invoking, creating, activating the divine God-light over agenda. And when you do that, you are surrendering to the higher good of all. It is an activation of the higher good. This is the core power of what divine alchemy and transmutation is all about. It is very important that as spiritual beings, as people who are choosing an enlightened path, that we do not walk around with blinders on. It is equally as important to be compassionate as it is to be discerning. Without discernment, there is no transmutation, there is no transformation. When you can see before your eyes, your very eyes, the behavior of individuals at play over what they say they are and what they say they represent. When you see the behavior, what is being acted out, that is discernment. It is not rocket science, it's very simple. Look at and pay attention to the behavior of others. If their behavior has a lineage and multitude of behavioral patterns which are clearly self-agenda related. In other words, if people are self-serving in how they behave versus what they say they do, that means that they're choosing that. That is their free will. And these are the foundations of how corruption occurs. So, it is our job, it is our enlightenment to take things to take things as they are, to really honor what we see before us, to match behavior with words and compare and see what is equating to that and what is not. So the importance of this blog is because in our world today we're seeing such enormous polarities, I've spoken about this before, between what is goodness and what is darkness or corruption. Other people might call that evil. And we're looking at a world today where we have had a sort of cleansing and detox process occur. This cleansing and detox process some people call a massive energy shift into an enlightened state of being, and others call better politicians, like in the ones in the United States where we've seen people vying for equal rights and really stepping behind equal rights and behaving as advocates and revolutionary seekers of change for, pro, and to equal rights. And that will cause another effect. When you're amplifying anything, whatever isn't of it, it starts to appear, it starts to come out of the pores. And this is what we're seeing today in the United States of America and in our world. We're seeing the toxicity seeping out of the pores where we thought it didn't exist. We thought it was healing or on its way to being diminished and transformed into love. We thought this. Many of us did. In the behavioral patterns we're seeing in each individual is what we also see globally and universally. So, being that we are all connected God beings, even the people who are still living in corruption, being that they are also God beings, they are of God light. They may be a version of God light that is left dormant or unawakened or stuck. This doesn't mean that we just keep sending love. It means that we send love and we couple that with discernment and with our eyes wide open as to what the behavior really is. If we do not do that, we are just assuming that they will choose via their free will to do the right thing because we send them love, and that is not the case. That is not the case. It is of utmost importance that we call out, that we make accountable the people, the institutions, and the behaviors, the actual behaviors of people who are not behaving out of goodness and love, and those who often so believe what they say. Narcissism is real. Narcissists really believe what they say. It's translated into what is called gaslighting. Very important thing to look up. They will turn their own toxicity onto another person and say that their behavior is wrong or crazy, or they didn't do what they did or did what they did. They make things up. So we see in our world today a mass population of narcissists, but the narcissism that is behind corruption is that of, I believe what I am doing is correct, and therefore it supersedes anyone else's free will, and I will, on the sly, override that if I can. If I can override it, I will. That is corruption. Corruption is behavior on the sly, overriding, superseding, and coming from a dysfunctional place that is free will and ill will intended, because ill will is when you rob others of their choice, whether that is choice of being aware of what is the truth. You hide the truth, that is taking away someone's choice, because they will choose based on what is or is not the truth. Or it is a behavioral thing. So, someone steals or someone takes more than their share, that done under the guise of, this is good for me. It's good for me, so I'm doing that no matter how it affects the greater whole. That is corruption. So having said this, when we look at I am the being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires, and what that does to us on a vibrational frequency level is it takes over the ego and the fear and the level of corruption that can occur from I want to see lived out my agenda. I want my agenda to be lived out. So, the importance also of understanding compassion and what compassion really is today is compassion comes from having an understanding of that people are not perfect, and as human beings, we haven't been made to always do the correct thing, sometimes via ignorance. So you have compassion. Sometimes it's learned as well. When you see racism, often you will find that racism is learned. And I'm not talking about mental illness or any kind of undiagnosed or diagnosed mental disorder, because those things they're not the same as ill will per se. That's a whole other ball game that could be saved for another blog. But I'm talking about the compassion you have for someone, the room that you leave for someone to grow and learn. Compassion isn't to be used as a form of a complacency. It is to be used in an empowering and aware, enlightening form. This is why the most revered goddess in Hinduism is Kali. She's the compassionate mother. Kali is very similar to a female divination of what Archangel Michael is in Christianity and in other belief forms. Archangel Michael is very, very, very much like Kali. Compassion, but no room for allowing the darkness to prevail. Very important. That's where the discernment takes place. You amplify the light. If the darkness does not choose to blend in with the light, if their free will says, I do not choose this path, you only have one choice. You override that darkness. You become the beacon, but you don't allow the darkness to absorb into you. You continually stay clean in your intentions of what is good for the greater whole. I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am the flaming sword of Archangel Michael. And so it is. Over and out from Venus.